On the wing, Porter taking it home, and he'll hammer it home.
The NBA draft is done and over with, and each team has their new players, but some came out ahead compared to the rest of the pack. We haven't seen any of these new players on the court in the NBA yet, so in this video, we'll talk a bit about which players are gonna come out ahead compared to the competition. But first, a simple reminder on how to enter our brand new giveaway. We are giving away either an iPhone X Max, the new iPad mini, or MacBook Pro. It's all your choice. So be sure to leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter the giveaway. It's really that simple. Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets are one of the top young teams in the NBA, and they were even before the draft happened. Not only have they punched above their weight in the playoffs, but the Nuggets also have one of the best records when it comes to finding young talent to fill their roster with. This is the team, after all, that brought Nikola Jokic into the league. They took Jokic in the second round in 2014 with the 41st pick before watching him rise in the ranks and become the best passing center in the league. The team is also led by Jamal Murray, a 23-year-old player that the Nuggets acquired through the first round of the draft, after they added former projected #1 pick Michael Porter Jr. to their stable of young players in 2018 when he fell all the way to them in the draft at pick 14. The Nuggets might have scored another hit in the draft. This time around, RJ Hampton is their selection, and like Porter, there's a reason why he fell as far as he did, this time past the pick number 20 mark. They made the pick at number 24 overall, but there's reason to believe the Nuggets are one of the winners in the draft despite their relatively low position in the first round. Hampton, like many of the biggest name players in this year's draft, is pretty young. He's only 19 years old right now, born in February of 2001. As a high school recruit, he was one of the top players in the country and looked certain to be on his way to being a high pick in the NBA draft after spending a year in college. Coming out of his home state of Texas, he had offers from Kansas, Kentucky, Memphis, Baylor, and others. But unlike the majority of players, Hampton decided to become a professional overseas instead of going to college. While some other players such as LaMelo Ball attracted the eyes of scouts and raised their draft profile by playing overseas, Hampton struggled somewhat during his time in New Zealand and only had a couple of assists per game while playing as a point guard. He also only had 8.8 points per game during this time, not the highest numbers in either category. But if you think about it, there are understandable reasons why Hampton would struggle. He was a young player dealing with being in a foreign country on top of all the other challenges of moving to the next level. To say that Hampton's time in New Zealand completely takes away from his past history of being a highly rated prospect isn't exactly correct. While it is a setback, it's a setback that the Denver Nuggets considered strategically before deciding to make a move on the player in spite of it. Sure, they might have to put in more work to turn Hampton into a key player than they would need if they had picked higher and picked up a more polished prospect, or even if they had taken a more experienced prospect without moving from their pick in the 20s. However, in this case, the Nuggets are banking on the fact that developing talent is their specialty. They have a good enough track record in this area that it seems safe betting on their success in this regard and considering them one of the winners in the draft because of their first round selection of Hampton. After all, if there's one team in the league that can take a promising teenage prospect that was not so long ago highly rated but more recently fallen off and turn that prospect into a star again, it's this franchise. Getting the most out of this pick might take a little bit longer for the Nuggets, but considering their relatively low spot in the draft, coming away with a previous top 5 prospect at all at this spot definitely makes them look like one of the winning teams in all of this. Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings also came away with a point guard from this draft. However, they were able to pick one up much earlier than the Denver Nuggets. They selected at 12th and had a chance to pick up Tyrese Halliburton, one of the best point guards in the draft, who has been ranked right up there with top guards LaMelo Ball and Killian Hayes. Taking a highly rated player like Halliburton with the 12th pick isn't entirely as much of a steal as taking a top player in the lower parts of the round, but it's still significant. That's in part because Halliburton is a safe option. He doesn't have the dramatic family history that LaMelo Ball brings, and he's not a foreign player that will have to acclimate to playing in the States like Killian Hayes. He also has more college experience than some of the players going high in the draft, having 2 years at Iowa State compared to 1 year playing in college like many highly rated prospects. He's also one of the best pure passers in the draft with 6.5 assists per game during his sophomore season with the Iowa State Cyclones. And furthermore, with a 6'5" frame, Halliburton isn't a small point guard that will get pushed around. He contributes on defense and in rebounding and had a rather high 2.5 steals per game during his second college season, as well as 5.9 rebounds per game. That should contrast well with De'Aaron Fox, an existing guard on the Kings, whose game is focused more around scoring and passing than other parts such as rebounding and defense. Fox averaged 21 points per game and 6.8 assists per game during his most recent NBA season, but had only 3.8 rebounds per game, a career high that still doesn't stand up to the numbers Haliburton has in that area. Oklahoma City Thunder. It didn't happen right away, but the Oklahoma City Thunder ended up with quite the interesting prospect on their hands. And if history says anything, it might be safe to assume that other teams in the league have slept on this prospect and that the Thunder are getting a good deal here. The prospect in question is Aleksej Pokusevski, and it looks like this big man might just be the next Nikola Jokic. Both players are Serbian and both are big men, but that's not the only comparison to be made between the two. Additionally, both of them excel in an area that isn't typically associated with big men, passing. While playing in Greece with Olympiakos most recently, Pokusevski had 4.8 assists per 38 minutes, a stat which makes him stand out against any other 7-foot-tall player in the draft. It's also worth noting that Pokusevski achieved these feats as one of the youngest players coming out of Europe. He's only 18 now, but debuted at 17 for Olympiakos to become the youngest player to represent them in the EuroLeague. He's also, impressively, played both forward positions with Olympiakos. It's not often that you see a 7-foot player with the necessary skills to play small forward, but Pokusevski isn't in line with the average prospect in multiple ways. He was only drafted number 17 overall despite this interesting history and skill set, perhaps because NBA GMs are nervous about betting a higher pick on a player this young that doesn't have more of an established track record. And the Timberwolves didn't see the need to keep him around, instead sending him to the Thunder in a 3-team trade. But it's possible that in the future the Timberwolves might regret not sticking with the player, because it looks like Pokusevski has the best chance to continue the style of play that his countryman Nikola Jokic set out. That is, the style of a tall player that can contribute on the offense in a more dynamic way than just rebounding and playing it in the paint. It also looks like Pokusevski still has a lot of future potential and room to get better, being only 18 years old right now. Philadelphia 76ers. The Philly 76ers are another team that comes out on the winner side of the 2020 draft. Like the Nuggets, they were able to find a player that should possibly be valued higher and secure that player with a lower draft position. They did that when they took Tyrese Maxey from the University of Kentucky at 21, securing a point guard that can score in the process. Like LaMelo Ball, who was the first point guard taken in the draft, Maxey is the kind of guard that can score directly instead of just setting up others. He's a scorer first and foremost, and a specific type of scorer at that. His percentages from deep aren't high, so you can expect to see him scoring from closer to the rim. Maxey hadn't been linked to the Sixers before the draft, and that's another sign that points to the fact that his being around at the 21st pick was a surprise. He's also already got some big connections within the league. Maxey is represented by the same agency as LeBron James and Ben Simmons, and Maxey received congratulations from LeBron on Twitter after he was drafted. An underrated part of his game may be his defense, which is stronger than one might expect from a player with a 6'3" frame. The Sixers shook up their coaching staff and front office before the season to bring in Doc Rivers and Daryl Morey, and these two will try one more time to win with the existing team the Sixers have built up. That current roster includes 2019 edition Al Horford, as well as Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. It's clear that Maxey isn't walking into a team without current talent on its roster, so it'll be interesting to see how the pick plays out for the 76ers this season. Well, that's all we got for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you for the next one.